Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Give Me God of War walkthrough, and I believe we might be at the point where we're going to be exploring the Lake of the Nine, but I'm not entirely certain. Of course, we're going to be talking to the World Serpent, so we're going to be doing that now that we've got Mimir revived. Of course, I've trimmed out all the interim silliness, so you don't have to watch any of that. Shame you can't do it when you play, but, you know, we can't get everything we want. Shout out to the Frog, he's my friend, I like him a lot. One of my favourite aspects of this part of the Lake of the Nine. And at this point, I believe, because we've talked to the Serpent a second time, it's shifted everything. And one of the most amazing parts of this game, in my opinion, is how the Lake of the Nine gradually reveals itself. It isn't, you know, a classless prostitute whipping out all the goods immediately and asking us to sit on its face. It's tasteful. You know, it's showing a little bit of leg, a little bit of ankle, and then leering up to a stocking or a garter belt or something. And then every so often, you know, you get a little bit more. And it's teasing and titillating, and I like that about it. And it's constantly evolving, constantly expanding. And we're going to get some Dust of Realms right now from this Realm Tear. And I did this by accident, guys. I did not think that this was a fight. So I back up over here to the cliff top because I know it's quite safe. And then I start spamming the lightning arrows, which gets rid of the nightmares. And then I noticed that these guys are like level 6 or something. Level 6, purple. They're going to take 1,000 hits to die. If I get touched by anything they do, I'm dead. So I take a cowardly reproach up here, wondering whether or not I'm safe and whether or not I can keep cheesing them. And then one of the fellas climbs up, and then I realise I'm going to have to engage this. However, these enemies are just stronger and cooler looking versions of things we've already fought. The problem is I can't parry or block them. I can block that ground shockwave that he does in reaction to you throwing the axe, but all these other moves, I'm going to have to evade, and they have AoEs on them, so I have to be careful with my evades as well. That being said, this is not the most intricate or difficult thing. We're not talking, you don't have to do crazy backflips to stay alive here, you just have to play smart, and just bear in mind it's going to take a while. So you know his moveset. He will do horizontal swipe into vertical slam that has an AoE on it, and then he'll do horizontal swipe into vertical slam, and that's kind of what this guy does. He recovers quite quickly into these moves, and then at the end of the 4th hit, he's vulnerable, so that's when you want to hit him with the Executioner's Cleave. And that's all we're going to do, guys. We're going to kite him, we're going to hit him with Executioner's Cleaves after he does his 4-hit cycle, and then we're going to keep on spamming the bow from the kid with the electricity because it's really powerful. And ignore the threat circle. Right now, the threat circle's telling me someone's attacking behind me, but he can't physically hit me, so there's no reason for that threat circle to be on the screen, in my opinion. That's one of the failings of it as a mechanic. It warns you about attacks that are not a threat, and that's a problem. Anyhow, this guy's going down pretty quickly. Watch out for that. The amount of times I've been hit by that move because of the delay in Kratos shielding sometimes, because of animation priority and things of that nature, is too damn high in the famous memetic words. So he goes down and dies, and now we just have this fellow. And because if I go down there, there's always the chance that he's going to clip me once and I'm dead, I'm just going to shoot him with the boy. Throwing your axe does no damage to him because he's of course made of ice, so I'm doing it as a courtesy, and instead all I've done there, guys, is trim out the 10 minutes of me shooting him with the boy, and then he dies, and then we get access to the Dust of Realms. And I've kept this in and made it part of the walkthrough because it's going to enable you to upgrade the Amulet of Kvasir, which is my favourite amulet in the game and the most powerful one in my opinion. I saw a particular website that was giving you strategies and tips for this game. I saw a lot of websites doing it actually. Some of them were okay, some of them were not. But one of them mentioned getting the amulet that I got very early from Alfheim, which is a good tip, really, really good tip. And then the second one was getting one from, I think, freeing one of the dragons. It might be this dragon, actually, which I'm not doing this dragon, by the way, guys. I fucking hate the Fafnir dragon. There's a fight here that is really, really miserable, and obviously it can be done. It's not that it can't be done, it's just that it's not much fun. But I think doing one of the dragons gets you an amulet that enables the parry to be easier to do. It makes you block better, and it makes the parrying easier. And to me, that's like a joke, because saying that the parrying in this game is even remotely close to tight is a mistake. That's like saying that the fucking note window in Guitar Hero 3 is tight. If you've ever played Guitar Hero 1, you'll know that that's not the case. It's very loose. It's very flexible. It's preposterously loose. Oh, and this is important as well, guys. I've left in only that one sequence there. This video's purpose is to go around the Lake of the Nine, getting resources and upgrades from all these new areas, but additionally, you want to be picking up as many of the Yggdrasil tears as you can, the little dew essence that gives you stat boosts, because they're really good, and there's tons of them. You can get like 5 or 6 of them each time you do it. Really, really important to do. It's going to make you a little bit stronger. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I'm not going to show you the ones I've picked up. I'm just going to trust your ability to sail around this lake and pick up the good ones, right? I'll pick them all up, I should say. There are no good ones. They're all great. If I could make them all be strength, that'd be a different thing entirely. But there's a mechanic that doesn't exist, isn't it? Can you imagine if you could not pick them up and you could wait for them to mature by doing something and then changing what property they build up so you could make them all strength or make them all cooldown or something? How cool would that be? There's a lot of things that I'd like to be able to do in this game that you can't quite do yet, and I'm hoping that they definitely elaborate on it. Because one of them is the executions, man. I think if you execute barehanded, or if you execute with the axe, or if you execute with the claws, each of the animations should be completely different. But as it stands, you see one animation for everything. And I don't understand that. I don't understand why every one of those icy fellows he picks up and stamps on their head at the end. I don't understand why those, fiery draugrs he rips in half from, like, the neck down, like the sternum down. I don't know why there aren't, 3 animations that it cycles between randomly. Would it have been so difficult to make that? I feel like it wouldn't. And that's one of the things that the old God of War games did superbly. You always felt like you were doing something cool to the enemies because there was tons of these gory, grisly animations. And each of the games changed them. Like, you remember when you got on top of the Cyclops? On one of the games, you rip its eye out, which is horrendous and painful and very gory. On another game, he stabs the blades in the eye, and then he stamps on it, which is the most cruel thing in the world, but amazing and satisfying and crunchy, right? And that's what God of War always was to me, that kind of ultra-violent, but doing it in kind of a glamorous, almost trying to trigger all the political and news people who say video games are teaching children to be rapists and thieves and everything, because it was a very gory game. It was ultra violent and it was character silly comic book violence. It was so violent it almost like nullified its impact, right? Because it was so ridiculous, and every time you came up against a new thing, he did something even more ridiculous. And this game goes in with the punching, I feel like this game's answer to the previous ultra-violence is the punching. Because for some reason, you punch people in the face graphically, like really hard, frequently. It's crazy. Actually, it's really crazy. It's the type of stuff that Cartoon Network edited out of Dragon Ball Z in its original run. Anything that was too direct on the blows and things, along with a lot of the dialogue where instead of saying hell, they said home for infinite losers, and instead of saying killing people, they'll destroy them and things like that. They changed the language to make it a little bit less violent, even though it's still violent. But there's a lot of punching to the face. And it's satisfying and it's fun in the moment, but I just don't think it's as interesting as some of the stuff you've done before. Like when you pulled enemies with the chains onto their own weapons and stuff, that is memorable and ridiculous. And every animation in this game, don't get me wrong, is great that first time, but it doesn't have the same impact. It feels great, it looks nice, but it's nothing on those old ones. Some of those old animations, like, you couldn't imagine who came up with them because they were so just willfully crazy and shocking, but awesome. And not because we're all, wannabe murderers, but because it's silliness and fantasy and they're minotaurs and shit. Kill them all, right? These things are evil and nasty to us and we're trying to stop them. We're the hero, goddammit. Stop trying to sell us Christianity. But there is more Dust of the Realm as well, so that chest ended up coming in handy too, which means we can upgrade the amulet even further, which is awesome. But it takes a lot of hack silver, and one of the things I noticed on this particular recording run is because I wasn't doing a lot of the side stuff, I didn't have too much hack silver. So you might have to, look into that, trying to get some more. And there are some exploits online where you can farm it and you can cheat it and experience bugs and hack silver bugs and things, but there's no real need for it, I don't think. This ain't Ninja Gaiden 2 where people farm essence off like those respawning ninjas to immediately get the most powerful dragon sword. But this place is tough as nails, this area that I'm in right now. This is one of those parts you do not have to come here, but I came here as a mark of pride because I got bullied the last time I was here. This is an area where there is a giant corpse, and you take on the B-boss guy with 2 dudes. And it's really, really good practice for fighting that B-boss man with... I call him B-boss. I know he's not a B, guys. I don't know what it is. I just like it. He's the B-boss. There you go. Angry B-boss. Dodon Patch. Dodon Patch! Dodon Patch! Anyhow. He's a dickhead. I don't like him, but it's great practice. It's great practice of micromanaging threats and understanding where they're coming from and what's happening to you and things like that. And in a previous video I mentioned that the audio telegraphing in this game isn't as good as it needs to be, which is true. But it also has to be said that when he sprints at you, he makes a very specific noise. It doesn't have the reach that the noise should have, but it's still enough to give you an idea that he's coming at you. So that's useful, because that's one of the attacks that comes out of nowhere, and if you're blind, you can't see it where it's coming from anyway. But for the most, the move where he goes into the air and he does the 2 horizontal swipes, that move might as well be silent. That's really difficult to react to on the noise alone. There are times when he'll make a sound clip before it, but mostly he just makes the sound clip at random, it seems, which is a little disappointing. But then after we kill that first phase, there's going to be a spirit phase, and then a bunch of tassel worms. But immediately I use Atreus's hold square attack to summon the crows, and then I'm going to focus on getting rid of these 2 people that are with him. And I'm going to use 2 Executioner's Cleaves. I use a running attack, but it doesn't help me. And then I'm going to use Tyr's Revenge to put some damage on him, spam the arrows, and we get rid of one of the buddies. So 1 buddy down. The second buddy's weaker, so he'll die much quicker. That's why I intentionally went for the other one. And then he's powering up, which I should have stopped, but I didn't. However, it's not as big as a deal as it used to be. When the game first came up and people powered up, it was the end of the world. It was awful. But nowadays, it doesn't feel anywhere near as strong. Read into that whatever you may. But they've definitely tweaked things. But he's running at us. Oh no, he's shooting at us. That's what that one is. When he makes his Tupakina noise, he's getting stunned. Here comes the dude running at us. Watch him. Oh, he didn't do it. So that's something worth talking about. Did you notice how when I was in the Executioner's Cleave then, he was running at me to do that attack that he does? If he'd have been any earlier then, it would have been an inescapable setup outside of activating Rage of the Spartans. Because when I came out of the animation of executing, and the iframe subside, if you mash dodge or hold block, no matter what you do, he'll hit you then. If he syncs it up properly, and the enemies do it all the time, there's almost nothing that can be done. And I hate saying that because it makes me sound like bloody Phil, but it's true. The only thing you can do is rage, and if you're not using rage, then you're in trouble. That was unfortunate, but here comes the jump attack. So, did you hear the noise that made? Did you hear the noise that didn't make? See what I mean? Like, fuck this game, dude. That jumping stab makes a really nice noise that tells me immediately and my brain that he's coming at me, and all I have to do is go backwards. Did you hear it? That like, ching, it's got like a very specific noise. It's coming again. Hear it? It's like there's a very distinct noise there that tells you he does it 3 times, then he stops. And then he might do it again for another 3 times, but it's always 3 times that. But look at that. That was the first time I've seen that animation, I think, and that's amazing. I love that one. But then the other movie did no sound at all. Absolutely silent. It like makes sounds after he swung. What is going on? Crazy, right? Really crazy. But I guess, you know, it's one of those things. I don't know. I'd love to talk to the guy who designed the combat for this game. I should probably inquire to see if he's got like a Twitter or some kind of contact so I could interview the dude and just be like, why didn't you put a fucking noise on that move, dude? Have you ever played God Hand? Have you ever played Vanquish? Like, have you played these games where the camera and the audio is so important? Like, it's crazy, right? Do you know who Shinji Mikami is? Because you need to stop with this Miyazaki dog shit and go and check out the real fucking master. But here come the tassel worms. I think there's 3 or 4 of them. And at this point, tassel worms should be the least of your worries, because if you can do the fight that's just transpired, these guys are nothing. The only thing that's going to make it awkward is him, because there's one of those heavier Vikings that's walking about. But look at what happens with these arrows, by the way. Once you start shocking people with those arrows and you build that shock status effect, it puts them in like a crazy perma-stun for ages. It's ridiculously strong. And then you do things like this when the kid's on him, Tia's Revenge is on him, and I'm hitting him, and he's powering up his great staff. He's trying to regenerate. We're stopping it. We're putting him down, hitting him with the arrows. Like, it's crazy just the amount of lockdown you can do in this game. And it's very God of War-y too, and that's why I like it. Because in the old game, lockdown was incredible. You could keep enemies bouncing and there was nothing they could do. Like, you could even stun ogres, or in that game what they were known as, which was cyclopses. You could stun cyclopses with certain techniques, and if you were at the right range, you could immediately combo into the same technique and get another stun again. And admittedly, you would just square, square, triangle, and it's not the most interesting thing to do or watch, but it's damn effective. And then in some of the later games, I feel like they cottoned on to that, because I think in Ghost of Sparta I noticed that when I was doing the second Plume of Prometheus, the Cyclopses would recover and do an attack, so you had to back up a little bit, so you couldn't just do it that way, so it led to square, square, triangle, back up, square, triangle, like that, because you could bait this attack that would slow them down and enable you to hit them. And then that opens up all kinds of other doors, like if you do Plume of Prometheus while they're in certain animations, it doesn't prop them back, things like that, you know, certain priorities and such. Which, that's just all the minutiae of the game that you have to learn if you're interested. And I think I'm going to cover that on my channel next. I think I'm probably going to do Ghost of Sparta, because I like that game. It's cool. I'm concerned, though, there's a fight later on where you take on those, I don't know what they're called, I think they're called Hyperions. They're these dudes with balls, these like muscled guys, I think they've got 4 arms and these electric balls, and they teleport and slam them into the ground. And there's a fight where you take 2 on at the same time in quite a small circle, and that's a tough fight. That's tricky. But I'm looking forward to it, because it's cool. I'm looking forward to doing more stuff with this game as well. I'm curious whether or not it's going to have staying power on my channel, because the guide at the moment is doing well on the channel, as is expected. You know, some people were looking forward to it, some people, you know, like when I cover these action games. But when I searched for it on YouTube, I searched Give Me God of War, which is the name of the hardest difficulty. I was on page 7 of the YouTube searches, and you've got to ask yourself, haven't you, in that moment, what type of person searches through 7 pages of search results before they pick a video? And the answer is nobody. Nobody does that. So the likelihood of my walkthrough being seen is a little bit lower than I would have hoped. And it makes me sad, not because of, you know, the hard work that goes into it, or the fact that I feel like the walkthrough deserves to be seen because it's good. None of that. The thing that makes me sad is that the results that are showing up are lies. Like, it wouldn't bother me if I was on page 7 and all the other videos it recommended were exactly what they're meant to be, which is the hardest difficulty and everything, and walkthroughs. But they weren't. They were all playthroughs of people playing on normal. There was maybe 1 or 2 other videos that were actually on the correct difficulty, but fundamentally, it was all those people that had the walkthrough up a week before the game had come out. You know, all those people that put up 1080p, 4K, PS4, you know, God of War 5 times in the title and shit. You know the channels, I don't have to name them, but all of those channels taking priority. Like, I think there's even a fucking T Martin channel. Like, a T Martin video came up when I'm searching the hardest difficulty. By the way, guys, if you're wondering what the Ancient just did then, he set off that pot that he was next to, and that's why it did incredible damage to him. So if you can get this guy to do his crazy breakdancing next to the pots, it will take off nearly half his HP, and it's the most damage you can do to them. It's really cool. But it's just frustrating that you search for this specific parameter, and you get a bunch of playthroughs that are on normal. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Playthroughs on normal, awesome. Knock yourself out, have a good time. But when I'm searching the hardest difficulty, I should not find your shitty videos. It's just not how that should be, in my opinion. It frustrates me beyond belief. And it's funny because when I search on my account, I'm on the first page. Like, when you search on your account, I'll probably be on the first page as well. But what YouTube's doing in its infinite, you know, cleverness is it's prefacing your search results with what you watch. So you're seeing me because you know who I am, because you've watched what I've done. I'm seeing me because it's fucking me, right? But if you go into private browser and you search, 7 pages. That's brutal, that. Really brutal. It's heartbreaking as well. And it doesn't stem from You know, I don't want every video to get 1 million views because that's just unrealistic and silly. If it did, would it be amazing? It'd be great. But there would be a whole host of consequences that come with that. But it's just a thing of, like, when somebody searches for the hardest difficulty and they want to walk through, they're not finding them. And that's sad to me. Like, even if it's not mine, even if it's somebody else's, and there will be plenty of other ones. I mean, the boss fight database, does anybody know that channel? That channel is really funny. He just does boss fights in high quality. And when I say high quality, I mean visually and mechanically, because the gameplay is a joke. And I don't mean to offend the man, but it's obvious that he has no interest in displaying good gameplay, he just wants to display the fights. And I guess there's an innocence and kind of a beauty to that, like a simplicity. But it's not what I like, it's against my tastes, so I watched them just to see what they were about, and I found them hilarious, which is a quality in of itself, right? Even though it does sound elitist. But it was really funny, because it was just a dude spamming resurrection stones, which I was like, wow, interesting. That's how he beat this boss, is it? Spartan Rage, comes out of it, dies, resurrection stone. Like, okay. And then the boss is dead. Good job, dude. That's definitely going to help no one. Interesting. Ooh, some more Dust of the Realms, guys. Very important for upgrading your amulets and things. So that's another reason why it stayed in the walkthrough, if you're wondering. We're just exploring right now. It's pretty much dead time.
And we'll pick this up.
And there is a transition there because the checkpoint is quite interesting on this place. This is 2 of these ladies. 2 of the revenants. And if you're lucky, you can make it so that you kill the first one before the second one spawns. I'm not entirely sure what the spawn is here, but I like to stay over on that left-hand side because it seems like you don't proc the other lady. But I guess we'll find out from the footage, right? But I was really curious to see what that guy would do against Magni and Modai, because I don't know if you're like me, but when I make a walkthrough for something, when I've had a tough time with a part of it, I always think the same thing. I'm always of the mindset of, like, I can't imagine people doing what I've just done. That was really hard. You know, that was super difficult. I struggled, I suffered. I imagine most people will just not do that. They'll just not deal with it. They'll decide to do something else. But I forget that I play games in such a very particular and archaic and stupid way. So I assume nobody's, like, upgrading defense and vitality. I assume nobody's wearing heavy armor and getting better defense that way. I assume people don't have 1 million rage bars and all this other shit and really high HP. I assume people played it like I did, and thus the struggle happens because it's much more difficult, right? And I always make this assumption. I'll do something like the Evil Within. Evil Within 2. I did a part of the Evil Within 2 on my walkthrough, and I just felt to myself, that was so difficult. That was really, really challenging. I'm impressed that other people are even going to attempt this, because this is crazy. That was tough, right? And then I realised, after watching other people do it, that I'm an idiot. Pretty much. Because what I did on that, if you've never watched that video, I did no damage. And the hardest difficulty in that game lets you take a lot of hits. So it lets you take a lot of mistakes. And every time I took a hit, I restarted. So for me, there was no mistakes. There was no room for error. There was nothing. It was just, boom, you messed up, you're done, start again. And it made it really taxing at some parts. Not that taxing in the grand scheme of things, but when you're in it, it feels intense, it feels difficult, it feels like a struggle and a challenge. So I come into these videos expecting to see the suffering that I went through to get what I got on that footage. Which is to say, 1 or 2 attempts maybe, but it feels worse when you're in it, obviously. And then I watch, and people are getting hit and grabbed, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, you can take a lot of damage in this game, I didn't realise. And it just completely nullifies what you did. It's really funny. Because for some reason, when you do something tough like that, you always get this idea in your head that you've just done the hardest thing ever done and no one else will ever be able to do it. And you look forward to seeing somebody do it and seeing how they do it. And then when you watch it, you're fucking disappointed because they did it in a really weird way. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe you can do it like that. Crazy, right? It's weird that happens, but it does. And it's the same with this, and it's the same with that boss database channel where I clicked on his Magni and Modi after I'd beat it, and I spent like an hour getting bullied by that final phase. It was horrendous. It was really, really tough. And I still think it's the hardest fight in the game because killing them both at the same time is really awkward to do, and they revive almost immediately. It's really tricky. So I'm watching thinking, how's he going to do this? Because this shit's hard. And then you watch and then you realise and then you kind of, oh, okay. And it was the same thing again. You know, he was using Traveller's armour, so he wasn't taking any damage. He had quite a large life bar. He had quite a lot of rage. He was using a lot of rage to get things done. And he was just using resurrection stones. And I didn't realise just how broken those resurrection stones were. Oh, by the way, guys, there is a pot down there, and my axe was kind of on it once or twice just then, but it wouldn't let me make the shot, so I didn't. I moved off and carried on what I was doing. But as I was saying, I didn't realise just how good those stones were until I watched Darkside Phil play this game. He was up against a Valkyrie, and he was fighting a Valkyrie, and she killed him in like 3 hits, and he got a really big life bar, and I was like, wow, this is cool, right? He's playing on normal, and these Valkyries are hitting really hard. That's what a secret boss should do, because it means no matter what difficulty you play them on, you're guaranteed to be challenged, and I love that. I think that's how games should be. Obviously, I don't think she should be as hard as she would be on the hardest difficulty, but I want her to kick your ass, because it's meant to push you outside your comfort zone. It's not meant to be easy at all, and they're not, and that's a massive feather in Santa Monica's cap. Oh, speaking of feathers, this is a Wulver. This is one of the most intimidating enemies in the game, and you want to 100% keep it on lockdown at all times. If you let this guy get breathing space and he starts jumping about and powering up his claws, he becomes a problem. So, my advice, use Atreus' bow to lock down, use Tyr's Revenge, and just do whatever you can to him to put him down. Wulvers are bad news, especially when you fight a lot of them. Strangely though, there's only about 3 fights in the game with Wulvers. There's one on the ice lake, there's one in the room where you break the ice walls, and I think there's one somewhere else, but that's it. And it's just like satyrs. They turn up, you don't like them, you get rid of them, you're thankful you don't see them. And it's interesting that they're not in the game that much, but if you do the side stuff, they're in a few other places, but they're an enemy that it can go wrong so quickly, and everything goes wrong, and they start getting really aggressive and attacking through what you're doing, and their moves are deceptively slow too. Do not panic when you're trying to dodge them, because you'll dodge into their attack, because it's really laborious of a swing, so just take your time. I like them as an enemy, but I'm not very good at them. That will change though, in time. But yeah, the Resurrection Stones are really, really strong, and he was using them to kill a Valkyrie, and he also come across a glitch that made it so that Atreus couldn't use it, which was really funny, so it soft-locked the game, and Phil's really good at that. He's really good at finding like super weird glitches that nobody else comes across, which is quite funny. But there's nothing wrong with using Resurrection Stones. The director of this game uses Resurrection Stones, because you know, you hear a lot of people talking about how games are meant to be played and how developers intend games to be played, and I think it's one of those interesting things of, I don't think you want to play a game how a developer intended it to be played, as much as we can say we think this is how it's meant to be played, or we find it to be this is the best way it is, so thus the developer wanted it this way. But I think the truth would probably surprise most of us, because just because these people make the games doesn't mean that they play them well or they play them in a fun way. Like, I was watching all the spoiler casts with Cory Barlog, who was the director of this God of War, and they were talking about, you know, what they were doing in the games and things, and he was mentioning how getting blinded was super frustrated and he hated it, yet it's still in the game. You know, he was talking about how he loved using, you know, the Traveller armour and the big heavier armours and things, and one of the other people was mentioning how they feel like Kratos should never have anything on his chest, and I feel, you know, kind of the same outside of the Golden Fleece. But you can't take his chest off, you can't take his armour off, he has to have a piece of armour on, which is a little frustrating, but what can you do? And then he was talking about, you know, using the Resurrection Stones a lot to get through really tough fights and things. And it opened your eyes to the scope of how people play games. Not everybody can play in a certain way, and everybody will approach it in different ways. And that's the true design of a video game, the choice that it affords the players to do. You can, if you want to, play the game and practice it enough so that you can beat everything without being touched and do it in a masterful, almost balletic way, where everything looks like it's been practiced and it's just one big elegant dance. Or you can just bang your head against it, brute force it, and use everything that's at your command to get through it and feel satisfied on the other side. And there's no right or wrong way. But of course, online, it's easy to come across situations where people criticize and people don't agree with things, and I'm no different, guys. I have playstyles that I respect, and I have playstyles that I do not respect. And it's just one of those personal things. It's never meant to be, you should play it this way, you shouldn't play it that way. But by heck, if it doesn't sound like that sometimes, I can't watch gameplay on YouTube unless it's of a certain level. And it sounds awful, doesn't it? It sounds really elitist and really scrubbish and just a nasty perspective. But it's an unfortunate side effect of always aspiring to be better. So when I watch something and it's not impressive to me, and to impress me, it has to be impressive, right? Everybody's got different standards. My standards are too high. 100% too high. It makes me very self-critical. It makes me very critical of both games and of my performance in them. But at the same time, it leads to, better things, and it's worth it in the end. But am I too harsh on other people's gameplay? Definitely. But it doesn't mean it's wrong, Play the game how you want to play it, guys, how you enjoy it. And that's how you'll always have the most fun. And fuck everyone else, right? Thank you for watching. You take care now.